On today's show, we are talking about 5 ways that you can disappoint your readers. So if you're looking to make some people angry, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Christina Catane, and I write Christian fantasy.
Okay, well, before the show started, I was directing Jen, go to this person first for that. I'm the host today. Hello.
I didn't say anything. I figured you'd figure it out.
Welcome to everybody who's watching us live, and also to our vibrant and wonderful group of chatters. Shell's already saying good morning. Hi, Shell. And we hope that anybody who's out there will join us. Good morning, Catherine. And if you can,
Shell's very happy.
Lots of hearts from Shell. Thank you. Excuse me. And so we really appreciate all of the love and support. If you could share and like our podcast, do all of the things to spread the word about us, we'd greatly appreciate you. We are still down one host, Rhonda, if you could keep her in your purse, but I'm here for at least today. And intermittently, I'll be able to join you all because of my work schedule. So
you got to tune in every week and see whether or not you can catch Jamie or not.
Yeah.
Yes, right. We start every episode of the show with a what's up, and I'll go first because I don't have a whole lot of updates, but my one update is about kind of the weather. We have gnarly thunder down here, like nothing I ever heard up in Michigan. The sound of it is so terrifying, but
Really?
I know that it's thunder and I'm okay with that, But then this morning I wake up to read posts from my Michigan friends. I have a friend whose both of their cars were just totaled. And I'm like, what? And then I'm reading stories of hail up there in Michigan. So really my what's up is like, what is up in Michigan with this hail?
So in the town I live in, it was a bad thunderstorm, and that's it. It blew a lot, whatever. My husband drove through the town just south of us, 10 minutes south of us. And he's like, man, there's just leaves down everywhere. So he's home for a few minutes. And I'm like, really? I mean, like, was it a tornado? He said, no, I didn't see anything twisted. It was just like lots of leaves across M15. It just, he's like, it was crazy. Well, he just kind of drove through and came home. Right. We're home. He's home for about 10 minutes and we get a call from Muffler Man. Now, if you live local and you need a good, honest mechanic, the Muffler Man in Davison, Michigan, we love those guys. They never treat me, when you're a woman and you go to a mechanic, we all know, all of us females know, they never treat me like a girl. They just are such good people there. Anyway, we get a call from the wife of the owner and she's like, and I thought my husband was kidding around when he said, so we have this vehicle we had borrowed from someone. They loaned it to us. We had an elderly couple in our church that just love us. And we were down to one vehicle. I'm okay with that. I'm very frugal, saving up money to buy the next vehicle. And they're like, just borrow this one. Well, after a while, we're like, let us just buy this one. And they're like, no. Well, then last week, my husband got rear-ended by somebody. Minor damage, but still damage we have to fix. And we're like, just let us buy the car. We'll pay for the damage because this gentleman only had PLPD on this extra vehicle. So he agreed. We agreed on a price. We hadn't bought it yet, but the muffler needed to be replaced. So we're like, you know what? Let's just go. We'll put it in over there. Our car was one of them. Like if we had been home, if I just left the car at home that day, no problems. But because I was going to get it fixed and everything, they called us and said, listen, if you have full coverage, the insurance company is going to total this car. We don't. So yeah, I have pictures I can send you guys, but like our windshield, miraculously though, the sunroof, nothing. It's the only sunroof that didn't get shattered in this parking lot. But across the street from this Muffler Man is a giant car dealership. Every single vehicle is going to get totaled. That's how bad this was.
Wow.
Crazy bad. Like baseball size hail.
Amber and I took Athena to a 2:30 matinee at the cinema. That's what Athena's calling it now because of the word on the front of the building said cinema. So
Aw.
came home and she told her grandpa, we went to the cinema. Anyway, we missed the whole thing.
Mhm.
Just
Oh,
we were in
wow.
the movie.
I think Davison is the one town that got hit hard. I honestly think it was just that one town. I don't
There were
know of
some
really any
funnel clouds in Mount Morris and Flushing.
really?
Yeah. They didn't
So
touch down, but there were several of them.
so if everyone who doesn't know, where Tina lives and where I live, this all happened like, it swept between us, basically.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the Muffler Man on Corona Road in Flint is the same.
They're good people
Yeah,
there.
we really like them there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about the Muffler Man.
Look who's here. Leah is here. Hi, Leah. We haven't seen you in a
Hi.
while. Missed you. Jess is here as well. Hi, Jess. Leah says her what's up. I've run away from home. Riding retreat. Oh, I'm jealous. I want to go on a riding retreat.
Yeah, for
The storm
sure.
here wasn't too bad at all. All bark. She said no, meaning all bark, no bite. Yeah, that's right. Jess Leah is in Michigan as well.
Yeah.
And Shell says, glad you're all okay. Thanks. Yeah,
I think
I was
Teresa's in
fine.
Michigan also.
Our
Yeah.
mechanic said too. He's like, it's just it's just besides the windshield, which we think PLPD will cover, he said the rest of it's just cosmetic. Which the sad thing is that I was still going to be looking for a vehicle for myself. This was going to be temporarily, mine until I found a vehicle. And then my daughter, who's old enough to drive, this was going to be her vehicle, right? Now my poor kid is like, oh, it looks bad. It is like dimpled everywhere, and I'm just like,
Well,
I
you
don't know
could
what to do.
inspire her. You could say, we'll continue paying your room and board, but get out there and wait tables or something. You could pay for all that cosmetic damage. It would give her goals.
Yeah, that's the problem though, is that it isn't worth what it would cost to fix it. Like you'd be fixing it beyond what the car is
She
worth.
needs to find
That's
her a
why he said,
boyfriend who likes to bump those out.
Or save
I
up for
don't
a car then.
I don't know a whole lot about this kind of stuff, but according to Lewis, who owns the place, because he happened to be there and he walked over to it, like they were closed, and he saw us, and we were actually friends with him now. He walked over and he was telling us that like to fix those little dents, it's not just bumping them out the way they are. He's like, it would cost by the time it's all done and everything is painted, it's just none of the insurance companies are gonna pay that. They're just gonna total all these vehicles. I'm like, that is crazy. So
Wow.
anyway. So
All right. Well, Tina, what's been up with you lately?
Well, I guess I should just address the elephant in the room. For those of you listening and not watching, I have a black eye. I actually have a goose egg on my head. It was an ostrich egg, so it's shrunk quite a bit. My husband tried to kill me. He left the he left the dishwasher door open, and I went in there in the dark and tripped over it, hit my head on the cabinet. So, got a concussion. It was all very dramatic. I went to Minnesota 4 days later for a funeral. My daughter had to drive the whole way because it still hurt to put my glasses on,
Mm.
so I couldn't drive. And then my cousin, who is a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, says to me, "You're a writer. Couldn't you come up with a better story?"
The dishwasher.
I'm like,
I
well,
love it.
nobody can match up to her stories. Like one of her helicopters exploded
Oh,
on the
wow.
day of the funeral. Like she got a
Oh,
call. Like
wow.
she's in charge, and
Oh.
they fix the helicopters and then they test fly them.
Mhm.
And the test flight was a disaster. So
Oh, wow.
I'm like, You know what? I'm also a pastor's wife. I got to go with the truth." And the truth is, I
I
tripped
think
over.
it's a great story, to be honest.
Well,
Like, I mean, like, let's talk about my finger from last week, right? I could have come up with like a more like realistic or not embarrassing story, but who's gonna forget that Jen injured herself with a cotton candy machine? You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Who's gonna forget that Tina injured herself with
Well,
a dishwasher?
I did really learn something about myself through
Okay.
this. Because, have you ever watched those TV shows or movies or read a book where someone's like in a coma and then there
Mhm.
was like, oh, she's a fighter. She'll make it. I am not a fighter. Nope. I had a cup of water in my hand when I fell. It was pitch black. I thought it was blood. I thought I was about to die. I just laid there and waited.
Waited for death.
My life didn't flash before my eyes. I didn't think about my family. I just waited passively for death to take me. And when it didn't happen, I eventually called for my husband.
Well, I'm so glad it was a cup of water, Tina. I don't know
I
what I would
know.
do without
I thought I
drinking
had blood
fluids.
like just like all over me, and it was the water. So anyway, and
Oh.
my daughter and I drove to Minnesota. It was great. She's number one adaptability. I'm number six. We are like go with the flow people, and our husbands are the opposite. So this was like a completely different experience than traveling with our husbands. But like
Mhm.
my husband every 10 minutes has to announce how many more miles we have to go. Um, like he's number one strategic
Strategic. I can tell that, yes.
and achiever in his top five. So like he wants to get there, and then as soon as you get there, he's announcing how long it is till we leave. Like none of that. Like we stopped at Taco John's and ate our
Mhm.
lunch inside Taco John's, and then went and sat in the car and read a book like for an hour
That sounds so
because
great.
that's what we felt like doing.
That sounds so awesome.
So yeah, we had a great time. It was really relaxing. We actually parked the car by the Mississippi River. There's a Mississippi River runs straight through town, and there's a dam. And the dam wasn't open up all the way. When it's opened up all the way, it's like something to see, and the roar of the water is just awesome. But they did have some of it open, so we were able to listen to the water. And so yeah, I really highly recommend that if you're high adaptability, go on a trip with another high adaptability. It was like I kept saying we're Thelma and Louise in it without the cliff.
You know what? I am not high adaptability, and strategic is in my top 10. So I wonder, like, we have gone on trips before, and I wonder, like, if I am like annoying to you like your husband is. I'm
Well,
not number
I
one
so
strategic
number
though.
10 is probably low enough that it,
Number
you know,
7. It's number
as
7.
and I
So
don't have to live with you.
that's
So
true.
like I don't
You can get out of
as
the car.
as a
like
number one strategic who hates people who rush me on my road trips, I'm gonna say it's his achiever and not his strategic
Probably.
that is at blame.
That's true. And
probably true.
I don't know if I have a where achiever is.
Activator and achiever in his top 5.
Now
Mm,
I gotta look and see. I know it's not my top 5. I guess this is only my top 5 here
So I
anyway.
always say he's like
Yeah.
a cross between Speedy Gonzalez and Chicken Little, because the sky is falling next week and we need to fix it last week. Like
well,
That's
what's been
hilarious.
up with you, Jen?
Well, so I've mentioned before on here, I think I mentioned the wedding cake that I had to make. So I made it. I overslept this morning, first of all. This is like Jen not showered. I put my hair up. Actually, it looks pretty. I guess I probably didn't need to admit that because it actually turned out pretty okay today. All night long, I just keep thinking that I'm so paranoid that this cake is gonna fall. I'm so paranoid this is gonna, and like when we got there, the room was so hot, like the air conditioning wasn't working or something, and they wanted me to put the layers in the fridge, and I'm like, I don't have time to come back on Friday and piece this together, and plus the fridge smelled like relish and pickles. You know how like fridges at like at places, yeah, it just was like, ugh. So there was a cleaning lady there, and she put me in a classroom that was cooler, but it's still the cake had gotten softened a little bit just from when we were out in the other room. But it's a little lopsided. I'm just gonna hold this up and see if you guys can see it a little bit.
There's
It
some
turned out
glare. Tilt it the other way.
this
Yeah,
is
we
probably
can see you there. That's good.
sometimes if you
Yeah.
put both your hands
Ooh.
behind it, it helps. But
oh
You got like the little pearly dots.
well, now someone's trying to call me. My brother who does, clearly doesn't know what I do with my life. I love him. He's my brother.
I think it looks really
Yeah.
good.
I do too.
If I hold it, listen, if I
Yeah.
hold it crooked like this, you can't tell how crooked it is. There's like it's lopsided. It for sure leans. There's no side that is like perfect. All the layers look better before I put it all together. But
Listen,
anyway,
she was in a pinch,
and she's very excited about it, but she's only
and
seen a
she
picture.
knows you're
So
not a professional,
yes, I know. I
and
know.
she knows Jesus, so she's gonna have a lot of grace.
I know. She's gonna be great. I just want it to be good for her. Like I love her so
She's
much.
gonna love it.
Anyone who knows her loves her, and like I just want this, and like she was so excited because she only asked for one tier, but I'm like, because she has a sheet cake for everybody else, but she has all these allergies and she just wanted something that so that they could like feed each other cake. Well, the pictures would show that it was just this little cake, right? And I wanted at least for the picture. So if nobody else says eats it, that's fine. I didn't care because it wasn't like, but anyway, so she saw the picture. She's super excited. If it just holds together, we're good. I don't even care. But I'm still a nervous wreck. So everybody be praying for this cake and be praying for me. And I all day yesterday I prayed that the Lord would just like take it and it would just be to his glory. Like I really just want it to be like a memory for them to have and whatever. Anyway, I just need to take a deep breath and
Yeah.
if it falls, I actually have a backup one layer cake that I can do like real quick. So I just need to take a deep breath. So
I think it's beautiful, and
I do
she's
too.
blessed to
you.
have a friend like you.
Okay, let's see. Leah says, "Oh, my brother clearly doesn't know what I do with my life." That's true. Like everybody
says-
knows what I do on Friday mornings.
And
But
below
not my
that, she says that line was savage.
brother.
Hey, my husband doesn't know what I do with my life. He sometimes calls me in the middle.
I
Good
love that like
morning.
our listeners like know us, but like she's like that line was savage. Well, that's pretty much what you get from me, like when
Yeah.
you're like in normal, like hanging out. So I
Yeah,
think
that's
that I
your
kind of
Julia
back it back.
Sugarbaker coming out.
I
Yeah.
know, but I'm not a mean person, am I? I feel like I'm
No,
a
you're
little-
not.
She's not mean either.
Yeah, that's true. What's up, Carol? Catherine says, I'm in my great grandfather's hometown near Grand Rapids, and I'm going to the cemetery to see his parents and his grandmother's graves. Great inspiration for my historical series. That is awesome.
Fun.
Rhonda would love that. Rhonda is part of groups that go in and clean like really old tombstones, and like she's all about that kind of stuff.
And
So that's awesome.
doesn't she do the tracing thing where she takes a pencil and a piece of paper and does the rubbing
All the
and gets
genealogy stuff with it. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Barbara
Rhonda
says,
loves to go to cemeteries.
yes, she does. Jamie is back. Sorry I'm late, Barbara says.
Hi,
And
Barbara.
yeah.
Wow, I was
Right.
gone last week. Yeah.
You have to be gone for an excess of
months,
4 weeks,
yeah,
I
I
guess.
know.
All right. Well, it's not time to read the sprint yet. So where is my outline? Anyway, today we're talking about 5 ways you can disappoint your readers. We know you're all hankering for some 1-star reviews. Jen put that in the description. That cracked me up. So we're just kind of talking today about things that will disappoint your writers, right? Do we want to talk about what inspired this episode, ladies?
Sure, I could talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the conversation started before our trip to Minnesota, but we spent several hours. I spent several hours in the car with my daughter driving while she told me about all of the ways that the books. She is an avid reader. Avid. She has read 100 books this year already, and some of
Wow.
them are 600 pages long.
Wow.
So she spent hours telling me all the things about books that drive her crazy that authors do. So
All
some of
right.
that might show up in here.
Could be, could be. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our number 5. Number 5. Don't meet the reader expectations / don't fulfill your promises. Leah's got one in the chat there that we're going to address later, but let's talk first of all about not meeting expectations. Jen, I think that you were the one to introduce me to the idea that a romance has to end with a happily ever after, for example.
Has to. Yes.
Yes. And you had some other good examples.
Well, Tina was the one that brought this up, right? It was about the reader expectations. So
Oh,
do you want to
yeah.
not fulfilling the promises? You want us to speak specifically to what your daughter mentioned?
Yeah, there was a story. It was a romance, but it involved a little boy. And my daughter's all about children, if anyone knows her. And so there was a relationship established between this mother and this child. And there was something that happened to her while she was a soldier in Iraq. And like the build up through the entire book was that this little boy was getting older and he didn't understand what had happened to his mom. And so like my daughter was waiting and waiting for that moment where she was going to spill the beans and the little boy was going to react and that whole juicy stuff. And the author just said, and so she told him everything.
And that was it. Done.
That's it.
And she was very disappointed.
Wow.
So if you are building up that this is like the pivotal moment of your story or one of the pivotal moments of your story, you can't just do it. and
I
then
mean, in the
not make it
author's
a pivotal
defense,
moment.
this was a side story. It was not the main story, but
But
that's what my daughter was drawn to that story because of her love of children, and so
right.
for her, it was a disappointment that
Mm.
that scene was not more fleshed out with more detail.
But I think that's a great example too, how we've talked before about like, and I've really kind of pushed that it's more than just a character arc. You have, you have these subplots. Each of your characters have arcs. You have spiritual arcs. There are things that it's not just one story. You have lots of things happening. And this is just a really good example of why that, like, to prove that that is important. So even your like your subplots and even like the different character arcs, people are there for that, like, and that's a good thing because that means that you're writing characters that people are invested in. But if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you fulfill the promises that you set up throughout the book.
Mhm.
And then along with that, reader expectations. Jamie had mentioned that, like, the obvious for one for me obviously is for romance, is that I have read romances before where they don't have a happily ever after and people are trying to promote this as romances. Those are not romances. Those are women's fiction or other genres, but it's not a romance. And so if you're going to promote something as a romance, it has to meet that expectation. If you're going to promote something as a mystery, like, it has to get solved in the end. Like, that is what people are, a cozy mystery, people are expecting certain things. It's got to be clean. It's got to have the mystery solved in the end. And, so
Mhm.
you've got to meet those expectations. And how do you do that? Well, you have to learn what the expectations are. You have to
Right.
learn your genre.
And I
Very
think
good.
another thing that she just brought up again last night. She's talked about this like 6 times now. She was reading this series and that there was a love interest in the first book that my daughter just fell in love with. It was like her book boyfriend, and
Mhm.
she killed him off in the second book.
Oh,
And
And she ends up with someone else.
she DNF'd the whole series.
wow.
Mhm.
And she just found out last night that this author wrote another book just based on the character she killed off. It's like a prequel about him
Mhm.
specifically, and she said, "I'm not reading it." Like,
Why? Because you know that she's gonna kill him off. Why
because
would you
you know
read
he's
it?
gonna die in the end. Yeah.
So
So
could that be a great book? It could be, but not if you're selling it as a romance. And that's what I even looked the book up that your daughter read to make sure that maybe your daughter hadn't picked up the, because here's the other thing too. We've talked about book covers and blurbs and how important they are. It was possible that that book was not a romance, but the cover said romance, and so your daughter picked it up and thought. But I went and looked, totally being promoted as a romance. And some people might argue that it's okay that, like, it's, they
she
had
did.
to have,
She ended up happily ever after in the end, but
but yeah.
my
So
daughter
and
didn't. My daughter literally grieved the death of
mm,
this character. She was crying. Like,
oh, I mean, that's a good thing for that author to know that she writes great characters. I mean,
yeah.
there's a positive there, but
Shell
so
says she's a sucker for a good first kiss. She read a few where the couple is flirting and they suddenly are together and then they skip the first kiss.
yeah, so okay, so there's a whole realm of Christian romance where there's no kissing at all, because some people feel like that is, there are some people that feel as if my books are racy
What?
because they kiss.
Oh my goodness.
So it's one of those things. So, like, yes, um, I agree, but I guess we need. I wish that there was like a subcategory in there. I wish there were more subcategories in Christian romance so that people that want books without kissing can find those, and ones that like think that's ridiculous would, find those. But yeah, I've read those too, and it feels very disappointing when, like, there's no. It's not just about, oh, there's got to be kissing. It's like there's just no natural progression in how
It's
a
about the
romance would
buildup and the
actually happen.
tension and then the fulfillment of that promise of the buildup and the tension.
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
even if it was one of those, like, I've heard there's a sect of, the Jewish faith now where, well, it's just not now, but I saw this thing on TV where they don't kiss until the wedding. Like, they don't touch at all until the
Mhm.
wedding. And so she's talked about when they first put her hand in her husband's hand at the wedding, and the
Mhm.
emotion and the physical reaction that she had, from just putting her hand in his because they had never touched was like so overwhelming, and it was like a first kiss almost. And so if you have that tension and that buildup, even if it's not an actual kiss, if
Mhm.
there's some kind of fulfillment there, that's going to satisfy your reader.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
Well, and
So
I think it's also just before we move on from this topic, you mentioned cover. Don't disappoint people by giving them a cover that doesn't match what's inside the book.
true.
All
I
right,
wanna
then.
I wanna talk about what Leah says here too. Leah says, "True, Jen, though sometimes a happy for now in a series through in an arc of their relationship that they end up married, it takes a while." So, yes, that's true. There are romances that do that, and they can be categorized as romance. But you've gotta make sure that you are still at the end, and I think that Leah would agree with us, that there still has to be a happily like, there has to be some sort of happily together. And I would say that, like, you don't kill them off in the second book, right? You
Yeah,
don't like
probably
it
not.
feels misleading to the reader, but yes, I absolutely agree with what Leah just said, so
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was only number 5. You think this will have to be 2 episodes, ladies? Let's see how fast we get through the rest of these. Number 4 is milking the sale. Now, this is just rude. Like, I guess this is the one that gets me because I have not ever fallen victim to this, but when I've heard about it, I've been so offended on behalf of my dear friend. So my dear friend would come to me and say, "Well, this book is a series, but each one costs X amount of dollars, and each one only goes so far with the plot. And then you have to spend money to get book 2, and then you
Mhm.
have to spend money." In other words, it should have been one book, and this
Mhm.
author very clearly decided to make it a cash cow and split it
Mhm.
up and force people to buy installments of it at prices that seem too high. So that is one way authors can anger readers, is by milking the sale in that way.
Right. And, um, so we're not saying that you should not price your books what they're worth. And honestly, I would say if we were to go look at all of our books right now, we probably are underpricing even at right now because book prices have skyrocketed in the past 3 years, and I probably need to look at my pricing again. Um, so we're not saying that. You need to have value in what your art and what you've done. However, um, like putting out a book that is less than novella, we'll say novelette, and pricing it for like 6.99, you're going to make people angry because when people see a price like 6.99 or even 4.99, there's an expectation to what they're about to receive. And when you come in less than that, then you can do it. Sure, you can do it. And there might be readers that will follow you and be like, okay, especially if you're a really good writer, but you're going to anger some of your readers
And
for sure.
especially if there's no resolution, especially if they
Mhm.
have to buy the next one. I would say if you want to do that, that's great. There's a market for that. It's called Vella.
Yeah,
And the
true.
readers that go into Vella are expecting that they're going to get part of a story and then they're going to get the other part of the story later. And they're expecting to keep buying these installments.
Mhm.
And then you're not going to make them angry because that's what they're expecting.
Yeah,
I
because I think there's a difference between having a cliffhanger and leaving every single loose end untied unless you buy book 2. It's a
Mhm.
completely different thing.
Yes, you can have complete resolution of the storyline, and then all of a sudden something happens to make you wanna buy the next book. Like
Mhm.
yes, that I think is okay in certain, and I think I kinda do that a little bit with my series too. Like, there's a complete resolution, there's a happily ever after every book, but there's still, like, this character that is in the background that you fall in love with, and you're like and then you find out they're in the next book. So, like, there's still, like, that element of, like, you wanna buy the next book because we're
Right.
gonna have Sarah in the next book
A
and,
lot of people say that my book ends on a cliffhanger, but the story is actually resolved, and then the epilogue ends
has
in
a
a
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger to
Mhm.
bring you to the second book.
I think that's
Mhm.
totally fine. Yep. Let's see. Catherine says dragging the story out is a great way to get terrible reviews in DNFs. It's true.
She just went on and on and on.
So
And I
if
guess that kind of leads into number 3. Don't bother editing, because I think a good editor would catch that.
mhm. Leah says, I get questions from people who see my ad on Facebook. Is this a full book? It's made readers nervous to have these half books. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
So
they've gotten
Facebook
burned.
ads. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not so much like people finding you on Amazon, it's through ads and stuff. That's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a whole nother topic of conversation to talk about. I feel
Mhm.
like this is
Yeah.
opening up a whole new thing.
Let's put it on
Um,
our list.
yeah, a few years ago, there was not a Christian author. She wrote stuff the exact opposite of what I write, if I can put it that way. And she wrote like what Jamie is talking about. So I'm wondering if your friend was reading books that were like that, more of like the erotica type of thing. But she was featured on another show, which I'm not going to say just because I don't want anyone to go looking for this person, and I'm not hating on this person. But she was, and one of the things she said is like, I can't pay the bills for 99 cents, and she was charging like at that point $2.99 or $3.99 a book. And I was reading her reviews just because I was just curious about this whole thing. And the negative reviews she was getting is someone did the math to actually get, because the books, it wasn't even like, it was, you're just getting a few chapters, really. It was like ending at like the first 25% or whatever. And it was going to be like, someone said, if you want to see this whole story of this couple from beginning to end, it's going to cost you, it was going to be like $75 because she had written so many books. But people, like, they just start reading and they're like, oh, that's so good. Like, because they get into the characters and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you can do it. You can't, we're not saying you can't. You're just going to have some angry readers. She had a lot of people that were fine with it and a lot of people that were angry. So I guess it depends on how good of a writer you are and how much stuff you're putting into the writing, if you know what I mean. So,
Well, number 3 is
all right.
what, Jen?
No,
It's like,
go ahead. No,
yeah.
I'm ready for number 3.
Do not bother to edit your book. Just
That
throw
will
it out there willy-nilly.
So we talked to this about this, how it will you'll get bad reviews, right? But I also think that by not editing your books, you're not going to get reviews.
Or
I think that
sales,
or
if they
sales.
do a
I
look
think
inside.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
At least edit the first couple chapters for your look inside. I mean, if you're really just being lazy, at least do that, right?
Right.
That's
Oh
great.
golly.
I mean,
Oh,
there are readers that will read it regardless and maybe they won't notice it,
Mhm.
but avid readers will notice it. They'll
Mhm.
notice the difference between, like, my daughter has read some books that were really poorly edited, and she can tell the difference. She says sometimes I want to know what happens, so I keep reading, but it's hard.
Yeah, I used to be that person that can put a book down. The more I read and the more sloppy stuff that's out there, which I do believe is the minority, I'll be honest. I know people like
Yeah.
to think that the indie authors are sloppy, but the more I read, the more I'm like able to like, nope. There's so many more books out there. I don't need
And
to
it's
waste my time.
almost easy
yeah.
now to tell, like, almost
Mhm.
immediately, just by looking at the Amazon page, if the blurb is full of editing mistakes,
Yeah,
if
that's a red flag.
if well, and in their defense, it could be the confusing way that you have to put it in. Like, because I had to go back like
Mhm.
4 times to try to fix these problems. Like,
Mhm.
you know how you put those tags that make things like big, like all caps and stuff? Like, they
Mhm.
left those marks in. Like, it was
Oh.
terrible.
Oh,
Um,
golly.
yeah, it took me 4 times to get it right, but if the blurb has editing mistakes, if the look inside has editing mistakes, you probably are going to lose sales.
Mhm. Barbara says, "Edit, please," all caps. I have a series I like, but Mrs. Simplest editing. Yes.
Mhm.
Catherine says, "Oh my word, there are so many sloppy books out there." I agree. Uh, I love Leah's heart. Leah says, "Hey, I did that one for my first book, publishing
Oh,
without editing. It was a mess. I really had no idea what I was doing back in 2010." She said, "The reviews were great story, hire an editor, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point."
and
I
that shows
appreciate
a
you
lot of
sharing that.
maturity to take that advice and follow it and not just be
Mhm.
like, "Oh, these people just don't know what they're talking about." Like
My
that.
book's so good, they don't have any idea. Right.
Good for
Agreed.
you. I love that. All right, I've lost my outline here. So we're going to
Number
go to
2.
number 2. Don't finish the series you start. Oh, leaving
Oh.
people hanging. This is where Leah said earlier, you don't want to leave the villagers. The villagers revolt when you leave them waiting, is what she said earlier in the chat. She says she's
Yeah, I'm trying to
behind.
find
And there's
she's
nothing
behind,
more
yeah, right there.
disappointing than I read a book a long time ago called Dawn of Wonder, and it was a
Mhm.
fantasy story, and the writing was exquisite. It was just delicious. Like, I love really, really good writing, and it
Mhm.
was delicious. And, of course, the story wasn't finished because it was a fantasy series, and he never wrote the next book.
Mm.
And I still go back to see if he's written it yet, and he hasn't. And
Mm.
I just get disappointed every time.
Well,
Oh, that's a bummer.
I know I've lost readers, I know, because I haven't come out with my book yet, and it's just been life, right? And I get it, but that again, I'm owning up to it. Like, my
Mhm.
readers have waited a long time for book 4, and this is how you make readers angry, is not finishing your series. And I am finishing it. Like, I feel bad for you, Tina, with that book, because I've also read books where the people just kind of like, I think they like dip their toe into writing and then they move on to something else, but they were good at
But
it.
this
And so
guy was so good.
yeah, that's so sad. Yeah, that's really sad.
You
But
should
Yeah.
send him some fan mail. Maybe you'll encourage him.
Yeah,
maybe,
really.
yeah.
Like,
I have a
I'll self-publish it for you. Just write like, I'll be your beta reader or alpha reader. Just send me the story.
I have a friend from college. He's actually a little bit older than me. I think he was in like, we're not like good friends, but we friends enough to like, we're friends on Facebook now. But he's an author as well. His dad was an author, and his dad passed away several years ago, and he finished under his dad's name, finished his dad's series. And
Mm.
I think that must have been so hard to do, first of all, like, to lose your dad and then have to finish his series. But like, gosh, what commitment. Like, to know readers would be left hanging as well. You know, I
Yeah.
thought that was
If
really
I had died tripping over the dishwasher with 10,000 words left in my third book.
I'd finish it for you. There'd be a romance in it, but I would do it for you, Tina.
Well, it is. It already has a romance. It has
Oh,
a
see?
happy romantic ending.
There you go.
Spoiler
Spoiler.
alert.
Uh,
So I could market my whole series as a whole as a romance, but each book is not a romance.
right. No, your book is fantasy that has a romantic element into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a romantic ending. It's like the culmination of their spiritual arc and their character
Mhm.
arcs and like the like off into the sunset part of their life.
Mhm.
So
All right. Well, all of this build up to the drum roll, please. Number one way to disappoint your readers is to not publish that first novel at all. If
Yes.
you don't publish, you're going to make a bunch of people super sad who would have loved your story.
We have so many listeners that are like unpublished. They're at the point where, they're learning, and which is exactly what we expect, because we're not experts. We're just here to help you along. But I think so many of our episodes might scare you into not hitting that publish button, because there's so many things to think about, right? Like the editing and the cover and the advertising and the book promos, and there's just so much. I mean, we are 224 episodes in with this, right?
mhm.
Just publish the book. If it's to the point where you're just not doing it, you're going to disappoint readers that you don't even know you have yet, because you haven't put your book out there. Do the best you can, edit it, put out the best version of your book you can, but publish your book,
Yeah.
because that really is where this whole thing starts, right?
And reach out for help if you need it. We got a great community
We
in
do.
our Facebook group. And if you need help, if you need advice, they are so quick to give it and to say, "I'll help you. I'll read your thing. I'll
Mhm,
help you with your blurb." They've been awesome. If you
mhm,
just
Yeah.
need
And
somebody to write with you in office hours, they'll do it. It's just a
mhm.
great community.
yeah, and I've been like thinking, oh, well, there's not a lot of traffic in that community. And you know why? It's because we're all nice and we don't have any fighting and arguments and
I
drama
know.
going on.
We really don't.
It's
But
a welcoming and inviting place for writers. So come on over.
and I don't know if, Barbara noticed. Barbara is our one fan that always shows up in Facebook, our Facebook Live, and we keep it going in Facebook for Barbara, mostly because I really, most of our activities on YouTube. But we had a couple of jerks this morning in the comments. I just went through and deleted them as soon as they came through. We don't get that in the group, because the group we like people have to fill out
Answer
a
the
questionnaire,
questions.
answer questions, and I've kicked someone out of the group before too. So it's a great community of good people, honestly. So
Yeah. And if you don't answer the questions, you won't get approved.
mm-mm.
Just FYI.
All right. Well, that is the top 5 reasons ways that you can make your readers angry. And now it's time to move on to my favorite part of the show, which is the feeding of the backs. We give each other feedback about sprints that we write just before we go live. So we haven't had any time really to edit them or tidy them up. And so because of that, we only give positive feedback during this. And Jen, as is customary, I'm going to pick on you to go first.
All
Tell
right.
everybody what our prompt was and how did you use like a talk to text because you're a little thingy.
So, okay. Yeah. So before Jamie wasn't here when we started sprinting, she'd already sprinted. And I was talking with Tina and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this because last week it was a disaster doing the text typing. I felt like it was a disaster. And I thought, I said to her, maybe I should take my splint off and just try to type. And she was like, maybe you just don't do the sprint this week because I just don't want you to hurt yourself. And anyways, so she's like, try just to like pick it out and see what you get. And then whatever you get, right? Because it's all about just writing. So here we go. I actually did the text to type again. I still think it's a disaster, but I wrote, right? So here we go. Oh, bye, Leah. She's heading off to do some writing. So good for her. All right. So our words, it was 5 words this week. They were glimpse, dramatic, fashionable, indoor, and post. All right. And I felt like this is not a historical 5 words. So we went to the world of Marnie and Mr. Boss.
All right.
Okay. Don't you think you're being a little bit dramatic? Marnie whipped around in her desk chair and stared Mr. Boss down. You want me to create a post giving a glimpse into the life of a top executive in this company. Who exactly do you have in mind? Well, isn't that fashionable? Mr. Big pushed some of Marnie's papers out of the way and rested his hip against the desk. Don't people want to know who's running the companies that they purchase from? Marnie wasn't buying it. She cocked a brow at him and said, Really? And who exactly were you planning on the post to feature? No, and who exactly were you planning to feature in the post? See, I had to redo it. Mr. Boss smiled in that cocky, adorable grin that she hated so much. Well, I don't think anyone wants to read about my aging father. I mean, he is a bachelor and all, but I really don't think he's single and ready to mingle, if you know what I mean. Unfortunately, Marnie did know what he meant. The senior Mr. Boss might not be looking for a girlfriend, but apparently Mr. Boss Jr. was. Listen, I'm your employee and I will do whatever you tell me to do. But if you think you can use the company's social media as a dating service, then you have another thing coming. I will feature you, but this is not going to be an abbreviated version of The Bachelor. And then it says new paragraph, new paragraph. This is one of the problems that I found. I'll talk about that later. Sorry. Marnie felt all eyes in the office on her. She'd always hated office cubicles, the way that their half walls give you the illusion of privacy when in reality it just gives eavesdroppers a place to hide behind. She also hated that Mr. Boss found this. She also hated that for some reason. See, I had to restart. Mr. Boss found her irritation somehow amusing. Mr. Boss leaned in close and whispered, somehow you are under the impression that I need help in meeting women. I promise you, Miss Smith, that is not the case. I don't remember what Marnie's name is. Another thing to hate about this guy, how good he smelled and how brown his eyes were when they were only a few inches from her own face. I'd rather write about your father, she said, just as quietly as he had spoken. At that, Mr. Boss threw his head back and laughed heartily. Well, Miss Smith, that's not the assignment. So are you going to write the post or not? Over Mr. Boss's shoulder, Marnie could see 3 or 4 co-workers whispering to each other, all the while looking at Marnie and the boss leaning on her desk. Fine, she said. I'll start on Monday. That won't work for me. It needs to start this weekend. I don't work weekends, Marnie argued. New paragraph. Mr. Boss shrugged as he stood. You do this weekend. I'll have a car come around and pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning.
Fun.
It's
I hope
okay.
she's hourly and getting time and a half.
I know.
I mean, I know that you said you think it's a disaster, but here's why it's not. Because this is a rough draft.
Mm-hmm.
This is a first
It's a
manuscript.
sprint.
And it's going to, and if you were going to use this in an actual book, you would revise it and you would edit it and you would flesh it out.
Right.
And you're using a technique that you're not used to.
Yeah.
But the
That's the more important
story
thing. Yeah.
itself, like there's the tension, like there's the adorable, what was it you said? The exasperating, adorable thing that she hated. Like I
Yeah.
thought that was great.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's adorable, he smells good, he's got brown eyes, but she hates him. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sure she does.
Yeah.
Um, and so like that whole the relationship building, all of it is just good.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
And so
absolutely.
it was just like technical stuff because you were using a technique that you're not used to, and it wasn't working quite right for you. So
Right.
that's
Right.
not a disaster in my book.
I would agree. Absolutely not a disaster because the purpose of a sprint, first of all, you wrote today. Look at you.
I know, right?
We can all
Exactly.
say we wrote today.
Mm-hmm.
And also, because these are characters that will someday appear in a novel, they are becoming more and more real to you every time you bring them out. It will inspire you to keep writing. And this is an interaction that reveals possibly things to you
Mm-hmm. Right.
as you're writing along, part of the discovery process. If you don't do these things, you kind of miss out on that element, especially if you're an extreme plotter. So good for you because that's
Right.
lots of fun. I love that.
Thanks. When I say disaster, like you have to see it. Like the punctuation is messed up. The words are not all right. There's some of the capitalization is missing. So what I've discovered so far, but this is a learning curve. I think this is like maybe it's good that I hurt my fingers so that I have to learn this. But the thing is like I have to balance this. Like I'm getting more words in. This is way more words than I normally can get in 15 minutes.
Mhm.
However, way more editing than I ever have to do with anything that I write when I type. So I've just got to figure that out. So
Mhm.
Catherine says, Jen, it took me a long time to get my speaking voice to be more like my typing voice. It will come. Yeah. That's part of the problem too, is doesn't it feel like it's a different person writing this than when I type it out? So that's the other thing too. When I used Dragon Dictation app on my phone, it was way better. And maybe it's worth it for me to spend the $15 a month to do that. I might, if they still even have that app anymore. It was great because my phone's always with me, right? And I would just start,
Mhm.
talking my story. Shell says, great scene, Jen. The tension and the description were great. Thank you. Dictation is just another tool in the toolbox. I agree.
Yeah.
Catherine's great. She says, not a disaster. It's a starting point. I agree. Barbara said Barbara loved the line on cubicles. So true. Good for setting anchor. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Barbara says, speech to text is rough for me. Doesn't understand my accent. Where are you from, Barbara? I wonder what your
Yeah, now
accent
I want to
is.
hear her
Mhm.
accent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine says she dictated 3 hours worth of a book on her drive down here yesterday. That's awesome. The cleanup
Nice.
will also be
Great
part of the editing
idea.
revision. That's how the Duke's proposal, which no one's read except for these ladies have read part of it, that's just sitting here waiting for me to do something with it, was on the way back from Olivet Nazarene University back home. I had like 5 hours in the car by myself, and I wrote that whole thing. Was 20,000 words in 5 hours. Like, that's just great,
Awesome.
Yeah, but anyway. All right, thanks, guys.
All right. I will
Oh,
read
she's
my
from
next.
Southern Indiana, has lots of Eastern Kentucky in it. I had a relative
Aw.
from Paducah, and yes, I had a family member who we used to tease all the time because she said "all" when she meant oil, and oh yeah, we used to tease her all the time. We loved her so much. I was so sad when she passed. All right, sorry, Jamie. How about you? What did you write today?
All righty. Here we go. Julie peered through the curtain, absently rubbing the velvety fabric between her fingers as she did so. Where was Papa? Mommy was making her way to the reserved seats, and Daddy had been in his chair since bringing her in for call more than 2 hours ago, though even he had taken more than his customary 3 bathroom breaks. Julie figured the book he brought to pass the time hadn't been as absorbing as the ones he'd brought in the past. So there was Daddy and there was Mommy, but where was Papa? She felt heat in her face and tried not to let it mean she was angry. Who could be angry at Papa? Papa, who never scolded her flair for the dramatic, who always encouraged her to dress as she liked, who always insisted it was she who was the fashionable one at school, and not those sleek young ladies who seemed allergic to color and flounce. Still not here? Julie's brother, who was much older and had an important job somewhere backstage, stood carefully to the side. Performers were not supposed to peer through the curtains, and he was a stickler for the rules. Normally, he'd have pulled Julie away after her first glimpse of the audience confirmed to her proud little heart that her family had obeyed the command to appear. Not here, Julie whispered. She took her hand away from the curtain and gathered the long skirt of her costume so that she could tiptoe off stage right. The performance was okay for an opening night. Julie did her part well, but felt within her heart that the comedy wasn't coming off right. The audience laughed when they should, but she knew that her disappointment was blunting all of the humor in her lines. At bows, Julie's smile felt faker than ever as she noticed her parents scurrying to the exit instead of standing in place, cheering along with the rest of the audience. Backstage, her brother was on the phone and met her eyes with serious ones. It was then that she knew for sure. Papa? Her brother didn't move, didn't blink, and somehow that confirmed her deepest fears more than any words could have. Papa! Julie screamed and collapsed, agonized and weeping.
Oh, Jamie. Oh. Not Papa.
Sorry.
It's okay. You've been doing.
Why are we laughing? That was sad.
Sorry, Jen. Oh,
I'm only laughing because she's laughing. This is not a funny. Now she muted herself. This is not a funny piece of writing. It was like, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm glad that you love Papa as much as Julie does. That's all. That's why
Yeah.
I'm laughing. Like I'm
And
glad
I love
I'm glad I did well.
And I love Julie. And go ahead, Tina. You're about to say something.
The whole time, part of before my daughter forced me to listen to my own book on Audible on our drive, we listened to Where the Crawdads Sing on Audible. And I know a lot of people have seen the movie, but if you haven't read the book, oh my goodness. Like, so it's night and day. But I was thinking like this, and the little girl character from the South that you've written before reminds me so much of the writing from Where the Crawdads Sing. It's so rich and full of detail and full of like stuff that sets the scene almost with the senses instead of just saying it.
Wow, thank you. That's big
They're
compliments.
beautiful.
I really appreciate that. Wow.
Yeah, I absolutely
Thank
agree
you.
with that. I also want to point out, I've noticed that you, in a lot of your writing recently, the past few months, has been like theater centered. There's been theater themes and stuff, which I think is cool. Like maybe there is some sort of series there that is like bubbling inside of you because it's not always the same story, but there's always some sort of theater kind of a theme. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but I love that because I feel like that's an area that you can speak to and that you can write genuinely about that. Just like when you would write about someone who worked in like as a waitress or whatever before you even like went back to, that as a side job or whatnot. Like it was just very rich and felt real. Like this feels real, and so I just really love that about what you're doing right now.
How ironic, because some of the advice I hated the most growing up was write what you know, but it turns out that's so easy. You go back to these comfortable things. If you put people in a restaurant, you know what they're going to do. Like that's why you write what you know. It isn't some kind of a way people are going to judge you. Oh, you don't know this. Why are you writing it?
Right. No, exactly. It's not
Right,
about that. You're
yeah.
right. It's just about it and it feels good to you. And it feels like, yeah.
And because those little details that you wouldn't know if you hadn't experienced it makes it more real for the reader.
Right.
Yeah.
And those details are exactly, I think, why I'm struggling with really focusing on the Marnie story. Cause like I could set it, I know it needs to be in a city. I could set it in Boston, but Boston has changed so much since I lived there, So I would have to probably set it in that time period, which would not work for a social media person. I thought about Chicago, but I've never lived there. I could research it. I visited a lot. Same thing with Detroit. I could do Detroit. But even though like you grew up in Metro Detroit, Jamie, my mom grew up literally downtown Detroit in Taylor area. I don't really know Detroit. I've never lived there. So that I think that's kind of what's holding me back a little bit too, because I don't want to be like sound fake. But
Mhm.
Catherine says, Jamie, you always punch us in the face.
That's a
That's
compliment,
true.
by the way.
It is a compliment.
Mhm.
And then laugh
Bar-
about it. Sorry.
Barbara says cliffhanger again, always rich in detail, but not flowery.
Thank
Agreed.
you.
Shell says, wow, Jamie, great character work and such a sad ending. And Jess says, Jamie, you can't come back to only rip our hearts out.
Well, she can because she
Yeah.
does.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. All righty. And so, Tina, what did you write today?
Okay, I went with first person again, although it's not the same story as before. So this is not autobiographical, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I think I got all the words.
Oh, good for
Mm.
you.
What I wouldn't give for just a glimpse of the sun. I mean,
Mm.
I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm a tough girl and I've endured many rainy days on the trail, in a canoe, on a lake, even fishing by the river. But this is different. The sky has been spitting drizzle on us for 2 solid weeks. It's
Mm.
not a downpour, praise God, but it's also not a mere sprinkle. The wind has been blowing it in such a way that there is no way to stay dry. The
Mm.
water gets under our
Ugh.
rain gear, down our boots, into our hair, even when it's covered with a hat. Forget being fashionable. We all resemble drowned rats. You may ask why we don't just stay indoors. Well, I'll tell you. All we have are these tents, and they've been drenched for so long there is simply no drying them out. Even if there were, there's only so long you can sit inside such a small space before the nylon walls start to close in on you and make you feel as if there is no air.
Mm.
Standing under the trees doesn't help. They are so drenched their branches drip endlessly and would continue to, even if the relentless drizzle were to cease. Even the trunks have rivulets streaming down them into what may have once been a dry bed of pine needles or a patch of ground. The pregnant clouds hang so low in the valley that it's hard to tell if we're walking through clouds or fog. Even the
Mm.
birdsong is subdued, the ravens the only ones joyous about such somber days. Walking through a field of fireweed, we reach a fence line, a rare thing in these parts. A large tin pot sits upon one of the posts, full to overflowing, the water sloshing over its edges. Thirsty? Somebody quipped. But the query was met only with groans and one patch of waterlogged moss that somebody had the gumption to pick up and throw. The trail rose steadily as it switched back up the mountain. The thick cloud we walked through felt more like liquid than vapor, making me wish for the endless drizzle below. My
Mm.
pruny feet squished in my boots as I walked, and I was sure they were covered in blisters. The wool socks I wore only made matters worse, as they'd been impossible to get completely dry, even hanging over the fire. Finally, we broke through the clouds, and I had to squint my eyes against the harsh light of the sun. Several of the group dropped to their knees and threw their arms into the air. Somebody started to sing a very scratchy version of This Is the Day. 3, 2,
Mm.
1.
That made me so uncomfortable, which is a huge compliment. Like,
Yeah.
ugh, I do not want to be with these people in this situation. It's horrible. And then somebody's going to praise and make me feel all guilty for hating life. Oh, the socks and the wrinkled feet and just like, ugh, no, thank you.
Mhm.
That's so well done, Tina.
And the
Thanks.
socks that you can't get dry and still then you have to put them back on
Mhm.
again.
And then that
Ugh.
pot on a fence post, like I could see it. What a strange
Mhm.
detail.
Well,
Right.
I actually saw one while we were driving through the cornfields of Minnesota.
Mm.
There
There
was
you
like a
go.
tin pot on top of a post. And I was like, what else would it be for but to catch rain so when you're working in the field you could get a drink?
Very good.
Because there was like literally nothing for miles, just this
Mhm.
tin pot on a post. It was crazy.
But that is exactly what, like, makes a story good, is when you
Right.
observe the world around you and you find realistic things like that, that, like, are unexpected but real, and then you can put them in your story, like,
Right.
so
Mhm.
good. Yeah.
Really, really good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that my what's next is to get into my book and to hopefully be here also next Friday with you all. But I'm going to be vanishing, and the two of these ladies are going to close out the show. So thanks for joining me today. Bye, guys. I'll see you next week.
Bye, Jamie.
Bye.
Real quick, Shell says such incredible detail. Tina, I agree with that. Barbara says she needs a towel and a hot chocolate. Good job.
So do I.
Um, yeah. Jess says for settings you don't know, Jen, look for some traveling vlogs or daily vlogs from people in those places. Sometimes people make it seem like they are there, even Food Network traveling shows. I agree. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I've met people who thought I lived in Lansing because of the way that I wrote about Lansing in my books, but it's just because I visited there, I researched it and like that. But there's just a different level, I think, when you're trying to write about not only in the city, but a rich person. But anyway,
Yeah.
but yes, I agree with all that she just said. So, all right, Tina, what's next for you?
Well, I'm going to go on Amazon and I'm going to leave a 1-star review for my own book. That's what I just. I'm just
What?
kidding. I kept threatening it as Amber was forcing me to listen to the
You really
audio.
feel like it was that bad?
There was
Cringeworthy?
times where I was like, if I have to listen to one more description of what's going on in Angelica's stomach because of her
Mhm.
emotions, I am
Mhm.
going to puke myself.
Mm.
So like, but it's like you see, like it's your own work, so you kind of pick apart like
Plus,
stuff.
it was your first book.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to like our first books.
I'm going to log it into my brain as don't stop with the stomach. Like the hot
Mhm.
rocks and the slithering fish, it's too much. Like
You know,
maybe twice in the book. Like
with
10 times is too much.
my first editor, the thing that bothered him the most about my writing were there were some things that I repeated all the time. Like I would say, um, like Marnie walked in the room, comma, lifting a brow, whatever. It was always comma and then something else. Every sentence was like that. And I never noticed it before, but he pointed out like, it was so annoying how many times he pointed it out that I don't do that anymore. I do use that, but I was able to fix that. Right. So I think that
Mhm.
like you listening to that and having this experience is going to fix that problem the next book you write. Right.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I got 10,000 words left and I've been stuck since March.
We
And
need to get together.
I just need a day to sit down and write. No excuses, no distractions, no housework. I'm like, we need a retreat with
We
just a
need a
whole
retreat.
lot of writing sprints so that I can sprint out these last 10,000 words and fix them later.
Next week, I know I need a retreat for sure. But next week, let's you and I get together and write. I mean,
Okay.
like seriously, like I know I keep saying that, but it cannot be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. But it could be Thursday. I guess that's the only day I have available.
That's the only
Or
day I would
Sunday.
have.
Okay.
Because
Perfect.
I'm leaving on the 1st
Oh, that's right. All
to
right, so
go
let's do
to
this.
Washington. So
We'll talk about that later. Barbara says that she dreams of a writing retreat. This is our dream on this podcast is to do a writing retreat. And I just need to it's kind of scary to think like, okay, we'd have to book something and then we have to make sure people are going to show up and like make it all work and stuff. But that is our dream is to have a writing retreat. So,
yeah,
because
we've
we
been
have done
talking
them
about it for a
before.
long time.
I know. And we've done it before with our writing group and it was awesome. And so, yeah, we just need to do
What
it.
we need is
So.
somebody from our group who is an awesome event planner who will
Yep.
not charge us anything.
Right. Right. Because we don't make money doing this, but yeah.
No, we actually
So,
pay to do this. So,
yeah, true.
all
All
right.
right. So, my what's next is, were you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I don't need. I
I,
think I was going to say something else, but I don't even know what it was now. So, what's up with you?
I'm
What's
my
next?
next. I'm going to work some more on dictation. I'm gonna have to because I can't really do anything else, and so it's even hard to use a mouse to even do stuff. So I'm gonna try to work more and figure out this dictation thing, and maybe this is a reason why this happened to me. So yep, that's
Maybe.
it. Yep.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you would like to join or share your what's next, please join us in our Facebook group. The link is in our show notes. And until next week, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.